Sports. I'm Steve Pulaski, special guest on my phone line right now. He's been writing about the NFL and keeping us in tune with the juicy storylines for more than 3 decades. He's a senior writer for The Athletic, a must-subscribe, I might add. He's one of 49 members on the Pro Football Hall of Fame Selectors Board and one of 9 members on the Seniors Committee. An elite class for an elite man. He's Dan Pompei, NFL writer for The Athletic. Dan, how are we today?
I'm great, Steve. It's good to be with you, and thank you for the kind words.
Absolutely, Dan. I'm a Chicagoan, so I've heard you on the radio numerous times. We'll get into more about the state of my Bears in a few minutes, I suppose. But more importantly, the NFL is so different than what it was 50 years ago, 20 years ago, even 10 years ago. You, Mike Sando, and the great people on the Athletic staff have compiled so much history and knowledge into the Football 100, which is out this week. What's this book all about, Dan?
Well, what we did, Steve, is we had a committee of people, and we said, who are the greatest 100 players in football history? And we went back and we discussed it and we met about it, and we had a number of votes. This was a process that started a number of years ago, and we came up with a list of 100, kind of a democratic voting process, and we had our list, and we wrote about it on our website. A lot of different people wrote stories, and then we ended up saying, well, what if we made it into a book? And we fleshed it out a little bit, and we did some different things, and that's what we ended up doing. And now we've got a book with profiles and rankings of the top 100 players in NFL history, in our opinion.
Where do you start in creating a book of this historical and informational magnitude, really? Like, what's the starting process for something like this?
Well, I think, the starting process is just the content and identifying how you're going to put it together and, who you're going to be featuring and how you're going to feature them. One of the nice things about the book, in my opinion, is that we had a lot of different contributors doing the profile. So there's a lot of different styles of writing and different ways of looking at the player. Some people kind of, obviously there's some players in the book, like Sammy Baugh, for instance, who played in the 1940s. Sammy's not around to talk to anymore, and really there's hardly anyone around who saw him play. So you're looking at, writing that story based on historical information. Then you've got somebody like John Hannah. In our John Hannah profile, the author interviewed John Hannah. So, like I said, there's a lot of different ways of kind of looking at these players, and I think it's an interesting, breezy read. Even though it's a long book, it's over 600 pages.
Was there something you learned that changed your view of the game or maybe the history of the NFL, or something that maybe got recontextualized for you while you, Sando, and the crew were conceptualizing and writing this book?
Well, I think, one of the things that was interesting to me in the process was at how we tend to always look at the recent players, the players who we've seen play, the players who we know about personally. In my case, even the players who I've covered and written about and met. I think there's a danger in something like this of kind of ignoring the players who played a long time ago or minimizing their contributions. And it's one thing that I fought hard against with myself and in our meetings and with discussions with other people who were part of the process. Like, hey, we can't forget about the guys who played in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, because they were an important part of NFL history and they were great in their own right too. I mean, I know, especially with younger people, I had a discussion about this with my 2 sons the other day, that, if the guy wasn't playing before you were born, sometimes you don't think that he was worthy. But certainly, like I said, there's a lot of really worthy players who played a long time ago. For instance, Jim Brown is our number 2 player of all time. And of course, he played in the 1960s. So I think we could have done an even better job, frankly, of really paying homage to those players who played long ago. But we tried to do our best.
You wrote a beautiful piece, too, this segs very nicely, on the late, great Dick Butkus, who passed away just a couple of weeks ago. What did Dick Butkus mean to the game of football, especially as you were talking about a guy that played before, a couple new generations of Bears fans were even alive, but was such a, towering force of a player? What did he mean to the game?
Well, I think he symbolized the game in the 1960s. He was an NFL most valuable player on a losing team and a defensive player. I mean, who ever heard of that? And, you talk about a guy who dominated. He was the perfect player for his era. he'd be less perfect for today's era because of the way the rules have changed and, would work against an intimidator and a huge hitter like him. But he really was special in terms of kind of just symbolizing what pro football was trying to be about at that time and doing it in a way that really, he played in an era, the golden era for linebackers. Go back and look at the number of great linebackers who played when he played in the 1960s. I mean, there's about, I think there's about 8 or 9 of them in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He was the guy, though. He was the man. And it's a shame that he never played on a winning team, never played a postseason game in his life, and that he didn't play longer because his knees betrayed him. But he truly was all about greatness.
He's Dan Pompei, senior writer of The Athletic. His new book, The Football 100, written with Mike Sando and The Athletic staff, available now. A couple more general, NFL questions, too. I told you I was going to bring this up, Dan. You're a Park Ridge native. I'm a Westmont native. I grew up, born and bred in DuPage County. What is going on with my Chicago Bears, and is there any hope for the future?
I don't think there's a lot of hope for this year. I think, they probably need a pretty good reset again, once again. It was good to see at least that they had a little spark in the last week with the new quarterback, Bagent, coming in and, showing some things. But the Bears don't have the talent that a team like the Detroit Lions have in their division, for instance. Certainly, you look at the elite teams in the conference, and the Philadelphia Eagles or whoever they are, San Francisco 49ers, Dallas Cowboys. Bears don't stack up with those teams. So they've got a lot of building to do still. The good news is they've got some high draft picks and an abundance of draft picks coming up. So they just have to figure out what to do with them. Obviously, if they're going to start over again at the quarterback position and move on from Justin Fields, and if they're going to try to use one of those draft picks on one of the potentially great quarterback prospects in the 2024 draft, I think, there's probably going to be some more significant change ahead in this franchise.
What's the most fascinating storyline in the NFL right now, by your estimation, Dan?
I've really been intrigued with the rise of the Detroit Lions. I was actually in Detroit earlier this week, and you look at that coach, Dan Campbell, and how he has galvanized not only the team but the whole city. Obviously, they're coming off a bad loss this week, but he and that coaching staff, Ben Johnson, have revitalized the career of Jared Goff, who's a potential MVP candidate, I think. They've got a great physical, tough brand of football. They've got, some really star players like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Aiden Hutchinson. And, it's good to see the Detroit Lions win. The NFL's a better league, I think, when the Detroit Lions are competitive. And they haven't been competitive in forever. So it's going to be fun to watch them the rest of the year.
Last one for you, Dan. I'm going to give you 4 teams right now. Which one would you say, I know it's a week-to-week league, but which one would you say you're most confident in seeing in the postseason of these 4 teams? Atlanta Falcons, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Cleveland Browns, or Pittsburgh Steelers?
Is death an option? I would say the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'll put my money on Mike Tomlin and pretty good defense, maybe the best defensive player in football. One of them, T.J. Watt. I think their offense scares you a little bit, but I think the rest of it can overcome it. I kind of like the Bucs too, but that's that division. It's just so hard to read, the NFC South. I'm not sure how that's going to go. Who's going to rise? Who's going to fall? There's so much football left to be played, and injuries will play a big part in it for sure.
I was going to say, not staking the mortgage money on the Atlanta Falcons and the Desmond Ridder offense, I take it?
I don't think so. No, that worries me a little bit. You always, if you don't have a quarterback you feel really good about, I look at a team and say, well, can they play great defense? Can they do other things to offset it? And for instance, those other 2 teams I mentioned, the Steelers and the Bucs, you would say yes, even though the quarterbacks might not be as good as some other quarterbacks in the league. I don't know if that's the case with the Falcons.
He's Dan Pompei, senior writer at The Athletic. I'm going to give you the final word, Dan, to talk about the Football 100 or your social medias. Where can people read you? The floor is yours. Promote what you like, Dan.
Well, thank you. I am a senior writer with The Athletic, a feature writer. I love doing features on the NFL. I've got I'm working on right now some big stories. One in Detroit I mentioned, another one on Jim Kelly, the former great Buffalo Bill. But I think right now we're trying to promote our book, The Football 100. We're very excited about it. And I think a lot of people are going to enjoy talking about it, debating about it, and telling us how stupid we were for not rating the players the way they would have rated them.
Regardless, he's a must-follow. He's a must-read. Dan Pompei, thank you so much for your time, man. Have a great rest of your season for the NFL.
Okay, appreciate it, Steve.